Podcast Evolved, your home for Halo.
Welcome, Spartans, to Podcast Evolved, your home for Halo. I'm your host, Oren, and I have two very special guests today. We have Will.
Hello.
And Josh.
How the fuck you doing?
There it is. Oh man, I am great. Of course, this is Will and Josh from HCS Pro Talk, our partners in crime over the last few weeks and few months. And they're joining me today on a very special episode of The Road to Infinite, where we're going to talk about Halo's multiplayer. We're going to talk about how each game kind of builds on the last, what new additions have kind of brought in, and just an overall survey of what is this multiplayer that has just been loved by generations of gamers and Halo fans for the past 20 years. And we felt that the two best people to have on this show were Will and Josh. We've been having our great partnerships over the last couple of weeks, so it just kind of seemed a very natural fit to have you guys on the show. If you're new to the show, welcome. This is Podcast Evolved. We have multiple shows. This is our main show where we talk news and lore, and also reach out to the community for different insights and opinions. We also have our Mission Debrief show, our Halo Book Club show, and our Builds a Block show. And this is all on our website, halopodcastevolved.com. Like I mentioned, we have a partnership with HCS Pro Talks, these two beautiful men, about our Map Legend shows, and where we dive and break down very popular competitive multiplayer maps and the lore behind them. And HCS also provides us with sort of a monthly digest that we premiere on our own monthly news show, so you can kind of see more of their content. And of course, follow them at HCS Pro Talk, and we'll kind of get into that at the end of the show as well, where you can find these two individuals online. We want to take a moment to thank our patrons. Thank you guys so much. You keep us afloat, and we continue to make more and more content based off of the capabilities that you provide us with your support. If you want to be a patron or learn more about the sorts of rewards and content that we create for them, you can go to patreon.com/halopodcastevolved.com. And finally, we encourage everyone to listen to Audible, where you can enjoy the growing collection of all of the Halo novels, all 30 plus of them, as well as thousands of other novels, guidance, wellness programs, and many, many more audio content. And you can use the URL audibletrial.com/podcastevolved to learn more and get started today. All right, I think it's time to get into some multiplayer discussion.
Ooh, we get to start with the worst game.
For the Road to Infinite, it's our ongoing series where we talk about different lore topics and kind of more recently, more Halo features that are going to be present in Halo Infinite, and we kind of take a look at what's come to forward to prepare us to the new release this fall. So this is episode 17 in that series, because we originally had it planned for last year, but then the delay happened, so we decided to make more episodes. Last month, we talked about the open world and post-launch content within the Halo franchise, because that seems to be a new feature for Infinite. And while they are embracing those two aspects in, I guess, just game design, there are quite a few examples of open world and post-launch content throughout the Halo franchise. And so we took a look at that, like ODST, and their sort of semi-open world navigation on New Mombasa, as well as non-combat missions that are in Halo 5 Guardians, as well as just post-launch content from all the Halo titles between map DLC, some single-player DLC in the Halo Wars 2 games, and things of that nature. So if you haven't listened to that one, that was a more recent one. It's on our feed. It's on our website. Check it out. So this week, or this month, we're going to talk about multiplayer. And then you just have to start by talking about CE. And like Josh said, that anyone who played it back in 2001, 2002, 2003 seemed to be just instantly hooked, that there just wasn't quite something like it before. And 343 and Bungie have talked about this golden triangle that they have, where you have your shooting, your grenading, and your jumping, that when you throw it into these maps, they just create so many different types of engagements and opportunities that really just captivated those players who played during that time. And since then, it's just been a huge iteration from weapons, from game types, from player mobility to vehicles to custom games to online and all these types of things. So I'm just going to kind of talk about some of the core elements that made CE what it was. And from there, if you guys want to chime in, Josh, I know you can kind of give your opinions of it firsthand. And then Will, I imagine you've played CE since, becoming a Halo fan. So you can of course still chime into what your experience had been. And it might even be an interesting perspective, because when MCC came out and I was playing like a game of CE, and then the next game would be Halo 3 and the next game would be Halo 2, like it was pretty jarring for me to kind of like wrap my head around these different games that I've only ever played in concentration for years at a time, to then just instantly change between the, it was actually a little jarring for me. So it'd be interesting to see your perspective. But to kind of give a run through, we have your general infantry combat, we have some vehicle combat in larger maps. We had our 4v4s, which is kind of the staple Halo multiplayer experience. And you had your big team battles, which are your 8v8s. But you also had your 1v1s, which were as common as they are now back then. The 1v1 me bro sort of thing definitely started as early as CE. You also had custom game settings. You can change the different loadouts you had, the different shields, the gravity, and some of those implementations. No online support, but there was PC with Halo CE on PC, and that actually had some online multiplayer play and some online-only maps. And I say new game types because it was the first game, so technically they were new, but you had your traditional 4+ race. So you had Slayer, Oddball, Capture the Flag, and King of the Hill. It also launched with Race. Those other 4 are pretty much the backbone of the Halo game type scene. Josh, is there anything you want to kind of touch on some of the foundations in the Halo multiplayer?
Oh, Halo 1. The big thing here, and we talked about it before we started recording, is that Halo 1 was really not... Halo 1's multiplayer was really not intended to be in the game. It was something that was built and then just added just to see what would happen. Obviously, things have blown up significantly since then, but in terms of playing Halo 1 multiplayer back then, not really my forte. But what I will say is, playing it in MCC now, playing the Gearbox port on PC, Halo 1 has seen better days. For lack of a better term, you can ask our good buddy Silos, who is a Halo 1 advocate, as it is definitely on the multiplayer aspect of things. And it's just... things are just inconsistent now with shots. And for those who play Halo 1 on MCC, you probably know what I'm talking about. But it's just, shots are inconsistent. They don't register when you think they should. Leading doesn't really work as well as it should. And it's just been a problem with porting over the years. But in terms of the significance that it had, we'll talk about Halo 2 in a little bit, but we wouldn't obviously have Halo 2's multiplayer if it wasn't for Halo 1's. And Halo 1's multiplayer, for all of its quirks and whatnot, it was ahead of the game. It really was. Do I think the pistol's overpowered? Absolutely. I don't think that should be a main weapon, but what are you going to do? It's just, that game, Halo 1 and Halo 1's multiplayer specifically, really just set the foundation, and every single one of them is different from the last, and sometimes in dramatic fashion. But if it wasn't for Halo CE's multiplayer just being there in the first place, oh man, as much as I don't really care for it, we just wouldn't be where we are today without it. So shout out to you, Halo 1. And hopefully 343 fixes your shit in MCC, because it's unbearable.
I think they've said they have 10 seasons planned for MCC. So there's a wealth of support going into that game, and we can hope that they just address those inconsistencies. Because I kind of put it to, it's been 13 years since I've really played Halo 1 in that sort of light when MCC kind of first came out. But yeah, there's definitely like a memory lane and kind of just going down of just like getting with your buddies, hopping into multiplayer, and just turning the time limit to just unlimited and just play and just always do something silly. And yeah, I think obviously we wouldn't have Halo 2 without Halo CE, but what's great is that once it blew up so well, Bungie really took it at like, okay, well, how can we make this so many times better? What can we fix? And then you get Halo 2, which in some people's eyes is the top highest point of the Halo multiplayer scene. Will, is there anything you want to add before we move on to Halo 2?
Josh kind of said it. Halo 1 was it's instrumental for, FPS games. You having that first, dual analog kind of control for a game. As far as the multiplayer goes, I can appreciate what it did. I'm not the biggest fan of it because I never got used to it, but from my understanding, it's the first time people were learning spawns and knowing how to grenade a spawn to get that kill. It was kind of like the first time you see kids really nerd out about games and become kind of that pro level. It sparked a lot of things.
Real quick, I just want to add a couple more things. Definitely in terms of Halo 1. Speaking about spawns, shout out to halospawns.com, which is literally a website dedicated to Halo 1's spawning system for their maps. It's insane. And another reason why I don't like that it's multiplayer, but that's besides the point. And then also, another big shout out, and Silas would attest to this as well, the emulation community for Halo 1. Because, like I said, Halo 1's shooting in MCC does not feel like it feels on a traditional like Xbox console or even on PC, and PC is not great either. But like from a traditional Xbox standpoint, an original Xbox standpoint, it doesn't feel good. So the emulation community has really been working hard on creating an alternative for people to host tournaments on and create custom games based off of like how it truly is meant to feel. So big shout out to that community out there for keeping that scene alive as much as they can. Awesome.
No, that's great. Yeah, the modding community in Halo is it blows my mind seeing some of the things that they do, and that's 343 even support as well. So yeah, thanks for that shout out. We'll have to go check them out. So Halo 2, again, iconic multiplayer, huge pro circuit. We get a lot of old school players that started off back then that are now like even working at 343 or shoutcasting for matches. And the image I always have is Bravo with his long hair playing Halo 2.
True.
But some things that Halo 2 kind of introduced on top of the CE multiplayer that we know is they introduced dual wielding. We had our first look at playable elites. We had Xbox Live that is new to the Xbox platform that Halo 2 took full advantage of and completely redesigned their multiplayer for that implementation. And then within the different playlists for Xbox Live, you had your ranked versus unranked playlists and kind of the whole just idea of true skill to get those competitive matches more competitive. You had multiplayer medals for doing things like double kills, triple kills, killing sprees, and that has become a staple of the Halo multiplayer suite. We also got a little bit of the post-game Carnage report, as well as online stats on Bungie.net, which is definitely very early on in its time and just kind of gaming in general. And then they added some new game types to include Juggernaut, Assault, and Territories, which have continued through on into other multiplayer suites and those respective games. I don't really have a note here for the maps, but like I would say about half of Halo 2's maps are considered to be some of the greatest multiplayer maps in first-person shooter like history almost. And even have a look at the Halo 2 anniversary maps where they just take those classic ones and remake them, and even throughout the other games, like you look at the amount of maps that have been remade, and a lot of them come from Halo 2. And that was something very interesting for me to learn as I was looking into our Map Legends series. Little shout out for that again. But yeah, Halo 2, like for me, it was just more of the same. It was getting all my buddies together and being like, oh dude, Halo, you know how we loved Halo? Well, now there's a Halo 2. And it's as simple as that. And just played a lot of hours of that. I didn't really know too much about the competitive scene until probably the Halo 3 era. So my sort of mindset was still very much on, my friends and I goofing around doing as many maps as we could. And it wasn't until afterwards that I realized that, oh man, you could do all these trick jumps. You can do all these fancy spawns and the level of detail that was put into the layouts of these maps and the creation of these modes were just so immense. And then again, the pro scene that went with it, like that was this whole industry that I was completely oblivious to at the time. I was just there enjoying the game. Josh, how does Halo 2 enter into the fold for you?
Okay. The golden boy of Xbox Live. This was their first true, this is like Microsoft's first true like representation of here's what Xbox Live is able to accomplish, and it's only going to get better from here. Halo 2 was the introduction of the multiplayer map pack, where you would buy, I mean, it came out on a disc as well as a download, but you could go to a store and buy a physical disc with extra maps to be added to multiplayer. That was something you just didn't see before. Halo 2, again, as somebody who never owned an original Xbox, Halo 2 was monumental in the shaping of online multiplayer, especially in a console space. Like obviously you've had PCs forever, but like in terms of a console space, online multiplayer was something that wasn't seen as largely available in titles. And Halo 2 was the one that's like, Microsoft has this brand new service and they are going to demolish all expectations that you could even think of. And then in terms of the competitive aspect, this is where MLG started in Halo 1, but this is where you have MLG really taking off. And obviously they continue to get bigger throughout Halo 3. But with Halo 2, you have some of the greatest names in competitive Halo to ever come out of the scene. You have dynasties in STK, which is shoot to kill. You have dynasties in the final boss roster with both ogres, Ogre 1 and Ogre 2. For those who don't know the competitive aspect, these players are considered, Ogre 2 especially is considered to be the greatest Halo player of all time, bar none. Yes, in terms of Halo 5, you have your up-and-comers in Shotzi and Frosty and whatnot, but when you say Ogre 2 to somebody, they're like, oh, he's the best. He is synonymous with being the best player in Halo history, and he really got the ball running in Halo 2. And it just continued from there. So Halo 2 is a game that I personally did not play a lot of. I did watch a lot of, and talk about a dynamic shift. Halo 1, pistol, 3-shot kill, right? That's the thing that everybody knows and either loves or hates from Halo 1. Halo 2 introduces a battle rifle that completely changes the landscape for how Halo multiplayer is played. That battle rifle is easily top 2, maybe even the best Halo weapon, I think, of all time. It's the way it sounds, the way it feels. The Halo 2 BR, I think there's a reason why it's being modeled after it in Halo Infinite. Is, I mean, if you look at it, it's literally, and they talk about it too. They talk about it in the designing Halo Infinite blog posts and the videos that they put out, that is the inspiration from it, is Halo 2's battle rifle. It's a big reason why.
They even ported the Halo 2 battle rifle into Halo 5 for the rec system as well. So they're definitely, there's a reason for all that.
Yes, and they put it on maps as well in Halo 5. And you talked about the maps as well. Some of the most iconic maps in Halo history started with Halo 2. You have Midship, which has been remade a million times, as you talked about in the Map Legends segment. It's Midship, again, I'm going to rub people the wrong way, but while it's not my favorite map, it is one of the most iconic maps. One of the most iconic maps in FPS history, not just Halo history. And you have Lockout, Halo 2, another one of the biggest staples ever.
Lockout.
Halo 2 is a game that I wish that I got into in its heyday, because there's so many people out there, like you mentioned earlier, Oren, there's so many people out there who think that Halo 2 is the greatest, not just Halo, but potentially FPS of all time. And to be honest, they might not be wrong. Like it's everybody's opinion.
Yeah.
Nobody's wrong. And I just wish I got into it in its heyday, because I could feel what they're feeling. Halo 3 is that game for me, which we'll talk about later, but Halo 2 is a special video game that, I mean, Bungie were able to flex their muscles and really devote a team to the multiplayer aspect. Microsoft were really able to show off their infrastructure with Xbox Live, and you've seen where it's gone now. And, oh man, talk about, Halo 1 was known as the console seller, but man, when Halo 2 came out, you had news organizations talking about that game releasing. You had celebrities really into it as well. That was like, you want to talk about peak Microsoft? I mean, Halo 3 might be that too, but like, oh, Halo 2 was just on that other level. I'm rambling at this point. Will, what do you got?
But I think the gap between, not maybe the gap's not the wrong word, but I guess the jump from Halo CE to Halo 2 might be the biggest positive jump between any other Halo games. Because from Halo 2, there is more and more iteration, there's more redesign, there's more innovation and things like that. But what Halo 2 was able to do from Halo CE was leaps and bounds compared to the other games. And it kind of made a new foundation for Halo multiplayer that then continued to go on for the next 15 years after that.
For those who want a different game representation of this, Halo 1 is Mass Effect to Halo 2's Mass Effect 2. Like, that's how big of a jump it was. And for those who play the Mass Effect series, you know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Will, anything to add? I don't want us to be the Josh and Orange show, but
No, honestly, Halo 2 is probably my least played Halo game. Don't have a ton of experience with it. Completely, you're right. In the jump from Halo 1 to Halo 2, it's astronomical what they did. You know, like Josh said, moving to the battle rifle, the maps are different. It was kind of crazy to see.
Have you also gone back and looked at, I guess, archived, if you want to call it that, competitive Halo 2 sort of iconic players and games?
A little bit, but not a lot. I've watched some of it, some of the iconic moments that Josh has sent me over the years here, but I haven't watched a ton of film.
You haven't done like a survey or a study of it, but yeah,
Right.
you've definitely dabbled. So you do get the sense and the feeling and the sort of mindset of like what it was back in the day.
Oh yeah.
All right, so Halo 3, 2007. I like Josh, I entered the online scene of Halo with Halo 3 as well. And so Halo 3, I think, has a very special place in my sort of heart for Halo. Also, from just a story perspective, I really like the conclusion of the trilogy more so than the other parts of that trilogy. But some sandbox things that Halo 3 implemented were the idea of equipment that, again, is kind of iterated on in future games, being able to use different equipment pieces to change the tide of whatever engagement that you're in was something that was very new to the Halo experience. But on the sort of back end of it all is that you also, what Bungie did is added these other features to support the multiplayer. And so you had theater, which was implemented to where you can go back and rewatch your matches. You can learn and study film like you would for like a real sports sort of like team. You had Forge that was introduced, which is your map editor, and you could take the different maps and add different additions to it. And they even came out with other multiplayer maps that you could just delete everything and create your own map and use this. I think that was Sandbox, right?
Yes.
So Sandbox, you can delete the entire map. It was made of Forge objects, and then from there you can make whatever map that you wanted to make.
Oh, Foundry as well.
Yeah, Foundry, you could do that. But what was also unique about Sandbox is that you could also like teleport up to space, and you can have a sort of space sort of what's it called, skybox, or there's like a underground sort of environment that you could also play in. So a lot of innovative ways to give more customization and tools to the player to kind of be their own designer for these multiplayer maps. And then you also had the file share. So once you created your map or created your game type with your custom settings and all that stuff, you had the file share system to where you can play those popular custom games, those crazy infection game types. You have your sumo custom games, and I'm blanking on a few of them, but I've played tons and tons of custom games with friends of just all the different crazy things that the community would think up, and that we wouldn't have had if we didn't have this file share system that again continues to be iterated on in later games. And then in terms of game types wise, we had VIP. Infection had its own game type. It actually started as a custom game in Halo 2, and Bungie was like, oh, well, let's just make this its own thing because everyone really likes it. And then Griffball was, again, another added and sort of official game type that again is just like this wacky game mode that like it's so addicting. Yeah, like I remember a bunch of my friends taking the day off from school when Halo 3 came out, and I wasn't that cool, so I just went over to their house over the weekend, and we just played the crap out of multiplayer. It's interesting having this conversation now about how much multiplayer I played, given that I like love the lore and I do a podcast based on the extended universe now, where although I played the campaign of like Halo 2 and Halo 3 a lot, I would say the multiplayer I played the most was probably Halo 3 and like Halo Reach. But it's interesting thought that I just had while talking about this. Josh, Halo 3's near and dear to you. Tell me about it.
Halo 3 is my baby. I will die on the hill that states that Halo 3 is arguably the best Halo multiplayer experience. I am with Will when we talk about Halo 5. Trust me on that. But Halo 3 is my shit. Halo 3, for the gamers out there, you guys may recognize the name Ninja. That's where he got his competitive start, was with Halo 3, as a matter of fact. But Halo 3 was, again, my first 360, my first experience with Xbox Live, like actually being subscribed to it, playing it all the time, really being invested in the competitive scene at this point in time. Snipedown got his start. He plays Apex Legends now competitively, but he got his start in Halo 3 as well. A lot of people that I pay attention to this day really got their start in Halo 3. Halo 3 was the first Halo title that got an official MLG playlist in its playlist hopper for matchmaking. That is the type of reach that they had, and how deeply rooted the competitive space was in that title. It got its own separate playlist that people could queue into matchmaking with, and settings were consistently updated all the time, and it was incredible. Halo 3 had the introduction of equipment, like you stated, that had some contention within the community, but it wasn't in competitive, so it didn't really matter in the sense of me. But the fact of the matter is, it blows my mind, and we'll talk about when we get to Halo 5, but it blows my mind that there is still not a social slayer being able to queue in with however many people you want, but a 4-on-4 social slayer playlist in Halo 5. It still boggles my mind that there's not that. But that's besides the point. I could talk about Halo 3 for like hours, so I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I'm going to say is Halo 3 changed for me. I guess you could say video games as a whole, but definitely first-person shooters. It is a game that I look at as revolutionary, kind of in the sense that people who really love Halo 2 do for that game. I think Halo 3 was peak Bungie, and we'll talk about Reach a little bit later, but that's a whole other story. But no, I truly believe Halo 3 was peak Bungie, peak Halo, I guess you could say. And this is coming from somebody who loves every entry, regardless of faults. But yeah, I love Halo 3. I think it did incredible things. I think Forge was revolutionary for the space. There were competitive maps that were based off Forge maps that were made by the community. And yes, we see that in Halo 5 too, but that started in 3.
And that's just so awesome. Just on a conceptual level, just that. And like you said, even today in Halo 5, that like the fact that a community member that's as passionate and understands the game design of this fan box can just go out, make a map with more or less the same tools, and that be recognized as, yeah, this is an awesome and fun map to play on. Let's host some tournaments on it.
Right, and not just tournaments, they're in matchmaking. Halo 5 specifically, there is a Community Slayer rotational playlist that comes out where community-made Forge maps are in matchmaking. You have in the HCS playlist, the Team Arena playlist in Halo 5, you have 2 Forge maps that have been spruced up, but they are in matchmaking. It's something that you just hadn't seen really before, and now we have stuff like that, and it's incredible to see what the community is able to do. And I didn't shout them out before, but I'll shout them out now. Shout out Forge Hub, because if you're looking for maps to play, they have boatloads, and there's more added every single week. And they have competitions like to find the best map that people make. Again, I could gush about Halo 3 forever, so I'm going to stop right now.
So for me, for you guys who went through the change from Halo 2 to Halo 3, this was the first time projectile shooting was introduced.
Oh, hit scan?
Yeah.
From hit scan to projectile?
Yeah, so what was the take on that when that came out with Halo 3 from 2?
So, again, from my perspective, it was, since I didn't play a ton of Halo 2, Halo 3 came natural to me. For those who don't know what Will's getting at here, in Halo 1, you had to lead your shots, right? Halo 2 was more of a hit scan where you point, you shoot, you hit. Okay, simple as that. Halo 3 got back a little bit towards the having to lead the shots a little bit more, having to be more methodical with your shooting. And so we flip-flopped between the games here, and we'll talk about things later on. But that's what Will's getting at with that. So there is a pretty big change from hit scan to projectile shooting. Oren, I'll let you go ahead and speak to it. But for me personally, since I didn't play a ton of Halo 2, I didn't really experience a lot of that adjustment.
I had a little bit of the learning curve for it because since I kind of played them as they came out as well, is that, yeah, when I'm playing Halo 2, I'm pointing my gun and I'm shooting at everything. And when that didn't really work in Halo 3, I was like, like what's the big idea? And then I finally was able to see that, yeah, okay, they implemented the system in here to where now you have to kind of lead your shots and kind of, have that element to it. I didn't know that it was called hit scan versus projectile based and kind of how they do it from a game design standpoint. So I kind of just had to kind of just figure it out a little bit as I was playing. But I mean, I played again, like when I wasn't playing online with some friends, like I was playing the campaigns over and over again, and just kind of as I played more and more of it, it just kind of came to me a little bit, and then that's how I was able to just devote so much time into the Halo 3 multiplayer and getting, and that's when achievements were introduced as well. Well, I guess they introduced them in Halo 2 Vista, but like achievements were also a whole nother aspect to Halo 3 that really captivated me personally, to where I started just getting achievements in any game that I played. But like I made that as challenges, like the free-for-all achievements to get, like getting your overkill, getting your 2-for-1 Spartan laser, and the vidmasters and all that kind of stuff. Like this is jumping to Halo ODST, but I would help other people get the firefight vidmaster just because I enjoyed playing firefights so much. And people are like, oh, why are you, like, you already got the achievement? Like, why are you doing it? I'm like, dude, because it's fun. Like, it's a good challenge. So, to your point, it's just the more you play, the more I was able to kind of just get to it. And I think I prefer the kind of leading because it just makes it a little bit more dynamic. You had the what gun was it? I think it was the Needler in Halo Reach, where they actually give you like a cheat sheet reticle to kind of help you lead your shot when you're shooting with the Needler.
If there's one thing I gotta add, big shout out to Bungie for including those Vidmaster challenges. You've had the whole meme before memes were really a thing of like, can I has recon? And then they fucking introduce a series of challenges, and they're hard too. They were legitimately difficult. A series of challenges across ODST and Halo 3. Yeah, two games. The Vidmaster challenges, in order to get the recon armor set. Bravo Bungie. Holy fuckamoly. That was great design decision on their part. And the best part is that they were worth 0 gamer score apiece, because the true thing that you wanted was recon. God, what a great fucking design choice that was.
Yeah, no, I amen to that. Like, all right, so touched a little bit on this ODST, Orbital Drop Shock Trooper, pseudo expansion of Halo 3 turned into actual game. It was supposed to be just a story DLC, more or less, which is a little strange because it takes place during the time of Halo 2. But the more they being Bungie, played around with it, they got this whole firefight mode. They added more multiplayer maps for Halo 3, that it fleshed itself out into being its own game. So the thing to note here is just firefight, on how this sort of horde-esque survival mode game type was pretty popular during this time in gaming. You had games like Left 4 Dead, you had Gears of War with their sort of horde mode, and so this type of game mode where you had to fight just endless waves of enemies and just trying to last as long as you can. Bungie took their sandbox and they're like, yo, we have a great sandbox for this. We have skulls, we have all these different weapons and enemy types. What can we do with it? And makes ODST Firefight, which is still a very, very popular game mode in the Halo series, and is kind of come and gone throughout. But I think it's worth bringing up because of the just how natural I think it felt when playing it, and that's more so I think to the sandbox that Bungie just designed with their enemies and their weapons, and then in some cases vehicles. But then also on top of all that, you had their whole like life pool system. They had the skull system to where each round had like a cadence to it, and you know which skull was going to introduce what sort of challenge. And then again, the cherry on top was Vidmaster challenge to get to the complete 4 sets. Do you guys have any good Firefight sort of memories or other sort of things to add?
Quickly, because ODST is not specifically a multiplayer type experience, I will say this. Speaking of Recon, that's what it used to be called. That was its...
that's right.
Yeah,
oh, wow. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was Halo 3 Recon before it was ODST. Glad they changed it. But, I mean, it's funny because you could do the Vidmaster challenges to get Recon, so cool tie in there. But Halo 3 also had map packs that you could purchase with Microsoft points back in the day. But with the release of Halo 3 ODST, they also released the complete multiplayer experience for Halo 3, and I think the Mythic map pack was included on that disc. So if you bought Halo 3 ODST, there were 2 discs, the campaign and Firefight, and then the full Halo 3 multiplayer experience was every map that ever released, and including the new map pack. Let me just say that those maps sucked, because Orbital, I think, was in there, and that map is ass, and then there were Assembly, I think, is on there, and that's ass.
I'm not a big fan of Assembly. I do like Longshore. I'm a little bit of a fan with Longshore. But you had Citadel was another one, which was based off of the interior space of like I think the Covenant map or Covenant campaign mission in Halo 3. And then you had Heretic, the midship remake, which was not that great, but
I think it's too small for Halo 3.
Yeah.
No, in terms of ODST in general, I think that Firefight, because we always talked about Gears of War's Horde mode, like you mentioned, it's one of the things that was synonymous with that franchise when they released it, and it only made sense. It's kind of like that battle royale discussion that's currently happening with Halo. It's like it totally makes sense to have in Halo. Firefight only made sense to be included in Halo as well in some fashion, and I think ODST's implementation was fantastic, and we'll talk about Reach in a little bit, but not necessarily anything from ODST's standpoint other than I'm glad it was a thing, because I thought it was Bungie being able to do something that they wanted to do. You guys can look into Bungie's history as to their contract with Microsoft and them having to create 2 more Halo titles before being able to move on. One of them was ODST. That's all I got.
Well, anything to add, or we can jump to Halo Reach?
I have not touched ODST in my time, so let's move on to Reach.
You still haven't played the campaign?
No.
Oh my god, we have to change that shit.
Such a good campaign. You need to get in your favorite lounge chair atmosphere for some jazz music on a rainy day and play some ODST. All right, so Reach is another pivotal multiplayer suite, because I think this is where the community divide happens, and you had things called armor abilities, which included things like jetpacks and holograms, but the 2 pieces, one so more than the other, but you had armor lock and you had sprint, and I think from Halo Reach, you had this divide to where you had old Bungie and new Bungie / 343, because 343 then of course takes the Halo mantle, and Halo 4 is very much a, I guess, innovation from Halo Reach, more so than another game. And you had this idea of sprint. Sprint was a cooldown. You had games like Call of Duty in this space. You had other first-person shooters that they were trying to emulate to a degree. But that one thing, I'd say, sprint and then armor lock to an extent, very much changed the mindset of what the Halo multiplayer suite became. for the good or for the better. I played a ton of hours of Halo Reach because that was the thing to play. I never made it to Inheritor because I wasn't quite that involved, but I did make it fairly far in the what are the levels, the rankings, I guess. But in addition, they also expanded on Firefight. They kind of called it Firefight 2.0. They had things like Versus. The one thing that I think Halo Reach does very well is implement elites in a good way in the multiplayer. So in Firefight Versus, you can have your buddy be on the Covenant side, play as an elite, fight you, who's a Spartan trying to fight for themselves. And then you had a game mode like Invasion, which puts elites and Spartans after each other in a very canonical type of engagement. So I think that was something that was very, very positive that kind of came out of that design choice. You also had game types like Headhunter, which is one of my personal favorites from the legacy game types. Stockpile, which is a new take on Capture the Flag, and the return of Race, because that went away after CE, and they brought it back to support and things like that. The arena also was introduced in Halo Reach, where it kind of was the competitive slice of the social versus, more competitive side. Ranked versus unranked. Or actually, Halo Reach didn't have ranks, did they? Or they? I'm trying to think. Or if it was just competitive versus not competitive, or did they actually have identifiable ranks within the arena?
I'm trying to remember. I'm not entirely remembering.
Because I remember it wasn't that well received compared to what Halo 3 and what Halo 2 did. So that leads me to believe that you didn't really have a rank associated with a playlist. You just had. You were, I don't know.
Your CSR ranking.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I have fond memories of Reach, but it's not. I kind of only really play Reach now for Invasion, and then maybe some Free for All if I wanted to play some Headhunter. But the overall sandbox, I'd say personally, is not the greatest, but not to say that it's bad. But because I do enjoy like playing the campaign. I think the sandbox within the campaign is great with the different armor abilities, the weapons, and a lot of all the multiplayer maps that you play are in the campaign, so you get to still play in those spaces. But Josh, what do you have to say about Reach? Because it's not looking good on this webcam.
No. So Reach was another title that I was very excited about. When the Vidocs came out, when they were talking about the development aspects of the title, I was genuinely very interested because it looked like it was setting a more darker tone in terms of the aesthetic, and I thought that was great. Then the game released, and okay, there's a couple hills I'm going to die on here, and again, this is all just my opinion, obviously. Will, I think you and I share the same sentiment that in terms of Halo, in terms of shooters, in terms of games in general, you need to adapt or die, and Sprint is the biggest thing of that. There's a lot of people out there that'll say that Sprint does not belong in Halo. I'm not saying their opinion is wrong. I'm just saying that you need to adapt or die. The fact of the matter is, yes, Halo has been an arena shooter, but not in the sense of like a Quake or a Doom or anything like that. In terms of like a 4v4, you have an arena that you fight in. You're based off your weapon skill, and then obviously things have changed throughout. But Sprint was something that we felt just needed to happen. And it was just an evolutionary part of that franchise, and honestly, I think they have honed it into a point where it works very, very well. Halo 4 was something that was, oh boy, we'll talk about that. But so Sprint was the first big one, like you mentioned. That was the thing, yes, like you said, it was the big community divide of what works, what doesn't, what's Halo, and what's not Halo anymore. The other part were other armor abilities, and probably the biggest thing was armor lock. And I think that is the armor lock, and the next thing I'm about to talk about were the two worst things that Halo has ever introduced into the franchise. That other thing being Bloom.
Bloom, I forgot to add that. Yes, very important point. Touch on that.
So for those who don't know about Bloom, for those who have not played Halo Reach in its base form, campaign or otherwise, Bloom is where when you shoot consistently, like with any weapon in the game, your reticle will expand, your shots will become more consistent the longer you fire and how long you hold the fire duration for. If you pace your shots, your bloom is minimal to none. But the problem is that's not what Halo has been, ever. It's never had that type of inconsistency in your shot. Halo Reach's bloom to me is now armor lock is just an ability that like when they introduced no bloom, no sprint, it didn't matter anymore because you never had armor lock. But bloom to me is the worst mechanic that has ever been introduced in a Halo game, because talk about a mechanic that fundamentally changes how you play the title. That's what bloom was to me. Sprint, there are comparison videos up the ass out there on running on two maps that are similarly structured, and you see the difference between sprint and no sprint, and you see like sprint doesn't really matter. Fuck you, okay? I'm sorry. Oh my God. I'm sick of having this quote unquote debate amongst others in the community. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Adapt or die. Halo has had sprint for so long now, it's just synonymous with the title. You know it's going to be an infinite, so shut the fuck up and move on. You're either going to play it or you're not. I don't care about the complaints anymore. There's my piece on that. But Bloom was the first thing that happened in a Halo title where I'm like, I feel that they really missed the mark on this. Because in the campaign, sure, it works out. I'm not really focused as much as in a multiplayer match. But when you're in a multiplayer game and you feel as though your shots should hit and they don't, that can lead to some of the biggest frustrations that I've just ever experienced in a Halo title and an FPS in general. It's funny how it's not in a Halo title anymore, because I think there's a big reason why it's not. In the competitive aspect of Halo Reach, because I want to hit on this. Halo Reach and the competitive community got off to a very rocky start. It felt like when you were talking about a disconnect between the overall community, there's even a bigger disconnect between the normal community, Bungie, and the competitive community. The reason why is because it took a very long time for no bloom, no sprint to be introduced in Halo Reach. It took a long time for MLG settings to be dialed in for that title. And as somebody who is really focused on the competitive aspect of the game, when we really didn't have that for a while, it really struck a wrong nerve with a lot of people. And I'm not saying that Bungie or 343 have to cater to us. Absolutely not. You guys make the game you want to make. We will obviously play it and try to make settings around it. As long as you try to support those settings, we appreciate that. I'm one of those people who will speak for that. All the entitled fuckers who think that 343 need to make a game for them, no, they don't. That's not their job. But I will say that when that disconnect happened, there was a big problem in the competitive community versus the developer, because we felt like our voices were not being heard at that point, and it took a very long time for things to be ramped up. And then you saw arguably the start of the fall of Halo esports. And when we get to Halo 4, we'll talk about Dark Days. But Halo Reach to me is a game that I'm glad exists, because we were able to learn from it and move on. And I know Bungie are proud in what they made, and for some aspects of the title, hell yeah, I'm proud of what they made as well. But I'm glad that we've moved on from Bloom. I'm glad that armor lock is not a thing anymore. And if I'm going to end on a high note, Invasion was a dope-ass game mode. That's what I'll end on.
The only thing I'll take to add to that is that playing Halo 3, I got into the cadence to where I would be able to fire my BR and know that last shot that I just did would be a kill, to where I would already start reloading like while that would happen. So when I tried to do that with the DMR and Reach, and where I shoot my shot knowing it should hit, I start reloading, but because of Bloom, it didn't kill him. And then now I'm in my reloading animation to where I lose the fight. So like that was one of the hardest things that I can remember trying to adapt to with Bloom back in that time when Bloom was still a very heavily implemented feature in the multiplayer. And I'm surprised I forgot to add it in the notes here, because thinking on what you said, it could be just one of the more divisive features that were added, and probably the only reason we don't talk about it is because they removed it, whereas sprint is still a thing, and that's why that debate is still going on. Will.
Josh just keeps hitting on all my points, so
I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
I'll go to you first for Halo 4 then.
All right.
Please do. Please do.
All right. Well, so Halo 4 comes out. This is 343's first, I guess, first new game, because 343 did do the anniversary edition of CE. It came with some anniversary maps that were for Halo Reach, and by then that was when No Bloom, No Sprint was around, or at least Zero Bloom with Sprint and all this kind of stuff. And matchmaking in Reach was in a much stabler state when the anniversary came out for CE. Then in I think it was 2012, Halo 4 comes out. It's 343's big debut, new campaign, return of Master Chief, new multiplayer, and I from my experience, I think it also had a rocky start from Reach. It did innovate from Reach, but it still had a lot of the same foundations. You still had armor abilities. Sprint was an innate ability, but it was still on a cooldown. You had the idea of loadouts to where you can customize your play style in the more social aspects. In the competitive games, I think everyone had the same sort of loadout, at least for the most part. In very rare circumstances, I guess maybe not. But from a social aspect, like if you wanted to play with the DMR, you could. If you were a BR, then that's your jam. If you wanted to do an AR and something else, whatever, very much player choice is what 343 was trying to do, which I think had its ups and its downs for that, because then it makes tuning much more difficult, because now you have to have all of these weapons to be more so balanced, because everyone's capable of starting with them. Whereas if there were more map pickups, then you can make some weapons be more effective than others, and kind of made this a little bit more difficult for them to do. Something we didn't talk about with Halo Reach is that's when Bungie removed dual wielding, and Halo 4 and every Halo since has not re-implemented dual wielding, which again is another, I think, more minor debate among the community. Me personally think it's probably an easier game to balance, even though I'm sure in the Spartan lore, you have Spartans who pick up mongoose and like smash grunts with them. I can be okay with not having dual wielding in the game if it's easier for the developers to like balance, because of the sandbox. There's so many weapons in Halo 5, and I hope they tone it down in Halo Infinite, just because just to make it easier at first, because it could really get out of hand. But anyway, aside from all that, Halo 4's kind of big thing is that they wanted to create player-friendly choice that you can implement with the loadouts. You had new game types like Division, Regicide. I'm a big fan of Regicide. I really enjoyed that. I think it was a good spin on the free-for-all. And even Team Regicide was another cool and very interesting take on the Team Slayer type of like how to approach engagements instead of just red versus blue. You had Extraction, which is a more interesting sort of like assault game type. Ricochet, which is another one of those community like, oh, this could be kind of fun, and we kind of do this with something else. Let's give a little bit more action sacky type of a fun mode. And then Infinity Slayer, the idea of, again, player choice, being able to call in what sort of power up and weapons that you want to use in the battlefield, and you kind of go out and do it, which I think Infinity Slayer was kind of a little bit of a brainchild for what Warzone eventually became into Halo 5. But Will, what are your thoughts on Halo 4?
Josh and I say it all the time. Halo 4 is the best Call of Duty game 343 ever made.
I'm so glad you said it, because I was going to fucking say it.
There you go.
Yep.
Oh, I love it.
So yes, you get that player choice of loadouts. It is geared more towards the casual player. When you look at it from a competitive side, it just didn't really gel well with the community at all. There was a lot of aspects that just, the sprint didn't seem fluid enough for me, at least. The maps didn't work. Maybe, what was it? Haven was okay.
I think Haven is like the only one.
Yep.
that like was like the solid, symmetrical. It's kind of sad, but I mean, there's a few fun ones in there. Even like Pitfall was the remake of Pit, which was only okay. Anyway, sorry to continue.
Yeah, so geared towards the casual player. Me being from the competitive side didn't really. It is fun, right? Like, I do enjoy playing it. It's just when it's hard to be in that competitive mindset when you have all these things going on, ordnance dropping in. Just, it's weird. It doesn't feel right as a Halo game to me, but I do enjoy the gameplay as it is.
I think at the end of the day, I think I might prefer Halo 4's big team battle dynamic. And I think that might be because when you think of 4v4 Halo, no, like you have to go full sweat, because that's the bread and butter of like a Halo competitive match. Is you're in your arena, it's 4v4, you have the same sort of stuff, and you just go out and you're trying to get your kills or capture the flag or what have you. But yeah, because big team battle, you can still have that competitive nature to it. Tends to be a little bit more on the more casual side. It's a bigger map, there's vehicles, you can search for your power-ups and stuff like that. So where like that sandbox was, to me, I remember having some good memories and some good sessions with friends to kind of all party up and play some Halo 4 big team battle. But yeah, it didn't really capture that like Halo 3 and Halo 2, just like, oh yeah, I need to win this engagement so that I can go to the next one and take home a dub for the team.
Josh, should we throw it to you?
Whew. Halo 4. Okay, let's get this out of the way. This game is not competitive in the slightest. It is fun as fuck to play. I'm going to get that out there. This is coming from somebody who loves the competitive aspect of Halo. Halo 4 is not a competitive Halo, but it is fun as fuck to play. And like Will said, if Halo 4 was a Call of Duty game be the tits. Like, absolutely. Loadouts do not belong, but they were cool. If you ask any competitive Halo player, Extraction was legitimately awesome, and we would love to see it return in some capacity in Infinite or just in general. Extraction was cool. I personally love Ricochet. I thought that was cool, like a football type based game mode.
I was a big fan of Ricochet when it came out, just because I was just like, whoa, this is just so cool and so new. Like, but it didn't really stick with me. It was just like one of those interesting custom modes that you just play every couple of evenings and then you just kind of move on to the next thing.
Halo 4 is the best redheaded stepchild you could ever ask for. Like, hands down. Like, you have some redheaded stepchilds, you're like, I don't know who the fuck you are and I don't want you here. But Halo 4's redheaded stepchild is like, you want that one there. But yeah, Halo 4 is not a competitive Halo game. So there's nothing in the competitive aspect that needs to be discussed here other than you, Oren, you are 100% correct, and I will take it one step further. Halo 4 has the best BTB out of any Halo, and you can fight me on that.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding me? And this is coming from somebody who loves Halo 3. Halo 5 has probably the worst BTB. We'll talk about that later. But Halo 4, to me, those maps were so good. And talking about a game that didn't have many great 4v4 maps, Halo 4's BTB maps were phenomenal. And to tell you how non-competitive Halo 4 is, I want everybody, not right now because you're listening to this show right now and I don't want you to go away, but when you're done listening to this show and you're done listening to our recent episode of HGS Pro Talk, I want you to go and boot up MCC. And I want you to go into the competitive playlist. And I want you to look and see what's in there. Oh, wait, I can tell you right now. It's H4 Squad Battle. You know what the fuck Squad Battle is? It's 6v6! You know what else? You know what else it is? It's 6v6 with ordnance, with vehicles, and it's fucking stupid. Why is that a competitive playlist? It's not. You want a competitive playlist? Take Slayer Pro. That's all you have to do. Take Slayer Pro, make it 4v4. There's your Halo 4 competitive playlist. Boom, problem solved. What the fuck's this squad battle shit? Oh my God.
Josh is heated about Halo 4 competitive.
Oh man.
Halo 4, I get it. It's not a competitive game, but you didn't even fucking try. It's like you leaned into, hey, it's fucking Halo 4. You said it, not us. And they just leaned into it and made that playlist. I'm dumbfounded. I'm just dumbfounded. Halo 4 is a fucking, oh my God. It's the best redheaded stepchild you could ever ask for.
It's the best Call of Duty game 343's ever made. I really like that, and it speaks. It says everything that it is. So I like that. I'm gonna take that. The last thing I'll say about Halo 4 is because it takes place on the Infinity, they've canonized the multiplayer into war games, which carries on into Halo 5. which is pretty interesting. The only thing that I kind of think is weird is that it's like if fire teams and like people like there is like a pro circuit within the Halo universe, but it's supposed to be also like a training grounds for Spartans. So it's kind of this weird reality where they're televising the training that military and special ops are doing, which I think is like a little strange when you think on it on that level. But that aside, it's a cool and interesting thing, and it kind of gives you a little bit more in-universe feel for the multiplayer and gives it just a little bit more spice, if you will. So we're gonna briefly talk about Master Chief Collection. Of course, Master Chief Collection brings all the campaigns from Halos 1, 2, 3, 4, ODST, and now Reach, because of the DLCs and all that. It's come a long, long way since 2014. I was one of those individuals who went to a midnight release. I install it day one, play a little bit of CE, and then was like, you know what, I'm going to play some Halo 3 multiplayer. And I must have fallen asleep trying to find a game, because it was like 3 a.m. by that point. And then I was like, I'll try again tomorrow, and was like, well, the multiplayer is not quite working. I'll just go play the campaign. And for the most part, it was fine. But, you know, everyone else who was there knows the story. But what I do want to talk about with you guys is Halo 2 Anniversary, because they did bring a pseudo-modernized version of that with Master Chief Collection that you can still play today. Like you said, go boot up Master Chief Collection. And for the most part, it's generally the same, but they did tweak some things. They gave the movement speed for the players a little bit more. They increased the power of the Magnum. They added like a silenced SMG and assault rifle. They also added a gun goose, which is a cool new vehicle, as well as some new multiplayer maps. They redid 6 at launch. I think they did 1, maybe 2 more since launch. Yeah, it's interesting. It's different. I think it's a little clunky, but it for the most part gives a idolized view of what Halo 2 was, I think, in kind of this strange HD filter, if you want to say it. Like, it definitely puts, the way I kind of look at it is that it's putting Halo on a pedestal. Like, we're going to make it look so much better so you could remember it in this beautiful way. And it's like, yeah, you're right, but I kind of would rather just play Halo 2 multiplayer since it's also in here. So, but yeah, the maps look great. They did some cool additions with, like, on Shrine, you can activate a waterfall, kind of gives them a little bit of player engagement and things like that, which are relatively new in Halo's multiplayer map design. We'll go to Will again first. Like, what do you think of Halo 2 Anniversary multiplayer compared to, I guess, either Halo 4 or just Halo 2's original multiplayer, given that it came out after Halo 4?
Well, again, with Halo 2 Anniversary and MCC, since I came in with Halo 5, I haven't touched much of Halo 2 Anniversary other than our community playdates, which generally ends up being BTB, because we have a large enough group. So I kind of seen Halo 2 Anniversary through the BTB filter. I don't really have much experience with it otherwise, but yeah, I kind of agree with you. You know, they just took Halo 2, it's beautified through the HD filter, like you said, and not being the biggest fan of Halo 2, I guess I'm okay with it. There was an issue for a while playing on the original Xbox One where, like, the frames would just tank on you while you're playing H2A. I don't know, maybe that's more what stuck in my head, is that the fact, like, I couldn't, if I wanted to enjoy it, it was hard to enjoy it because you'd be playing and you'd go down to 10 frames for no reason, and then it's hard to even play the game. Josh, I don't know if you want to take it away. You have more experience with this than I do here.
Halo 2 Anniversary. Fun fact, this is actually the start of the HCS. The HCS was founded. Was founded during Halo 2 Anniversary. There were 2 seasons, the inaugural 2 seasons, and HCS is now a lot bigger than what it was originally to be. So HCS now contains all Halo esports in general, but yeah, HCS started with Halo 2 Anniversary. And talk about a good point towards Halo 4. I mean, realistically, it's like Halo 4's graphics were put on Halo 2 maps, and that's what you got. So one piece of contention with H2A is that they didn't do it for all the maps. So people were expecting, I guess myself included, that they were going to do the kind of like the CE remaster, that they were going to do it for all Halo 2's maps. I think it could have benefited, but we didn't get that. It is what it is. I moved past it. But yeah, I think that it's cool it exists. It was able, like you mentioned, it was able to shine a light on Halo 2, especially in a competitive sense, where those who didn't join in during Halo 2's heyday, right? You were able to get a little bit of that experience for what it was like back then, while having it be more modernized, while still having somewhat of the same gunplay at play there. But Will, like you mentioned, that BTB. Okay, so again, this is before Xbox One X. This is before the series consoles came out. Those frame rates were atrocious on H2A BTB maps. Like, they were genuinely terrible to the point where it was damn near unplayable. Things have obviously been ironed out with new consoles. If you still play on an original Xbox One, you probably still have issues. But I don't know. I feel like we're a little bit past that at this point, which is unfortunate because I don't think they'll ever go back and make major changes anymore. But no, Halo 2 Anniversary. Very cool that they did it. I think the campaign was another one of those drastic, like, when you switch between the two visual styles, it's like, holy shit. Like, Halo 2 never looked that bad, but like with the upgraded visual, you're like, man, this looks really fucking good. So, like I said, I'm happy it exists.
For the campaign, they brought in Blur for those.
For the cutscenes.
Oh my
God.
For the cutscenes, yeah.
Woo!
Yeah, it's an animated movie at that point. Like, it's gorgeous.
They should make a fucking movie at this point. I mean, I know the Showtime TV show is going to come down the line, but like, Blur needs to make an animated Halo film, and I'll be in there.
We will be in the theater, whatever that is.
Yes,
very much so. I enjoyed High Charity at the very end when the Breaking Benjamin song comes on. No matter what, I have to change it to that song. So I play that. I'll play the campaign mission and the new graphics, and then when that engagement comes, I'll switch it, listen to Breaking Benjamin, do the stuff, and then switch it back for the cutscene at the end.
If you want to know how drastic the visual differences between the original and the updated visuals, I forget which mission it is, so Oren, you're gonna have to correct me here, but it's the mission where you get in the like underground elevator and you're going through the water and whatnot. If you switch,
I think that's Regret.
There you go. You switch between the original and the updated graphics. The original literally looks like you're staring at just blank space, like a gray blank space. And then when you switch it to the updated visuals, it's like, oh my God, this actually is something. That's how crazy that change was.
There's a whole city underwater here that's flooded.
Yes, it's insane. It's like BioShock exists. It's crazy.
No, when Master Chief Collection came out, and we were playing through that, and we were talking on the show, like, what our favorite, like, mission to play was with the new graphics. Mine was the Arbiter, because that's when you go to the installation where the Heretic is, and like the things that 343 did to kind of just make it feel more alive, like instead of just this isolated structure in this gas giant. Just like, I think really it reminded me of the visual enhancements that they did for the library to make it just more than just a bunch of gray walls with flood flying at you. Yes, high praise for the anniversary edition of the Halo 2 campaign. All right, we are on our last game, technically. Halo 5 Guardians. Your game, Will. We'll start with you, but before we dive into that, Halo 5 did a sort of redo of the Spartan or of armor abilities and made it called Spartan abilities. And 343's mindsets were is that you are a Spartan, you're capable of all these superhuman type of capabilities. So we're going to give every player these innate abilities where you can sprint, you can clamber, you can ground pound, you can slide, you can do your thruster pack, and you get your. They even sort of threw in the whole aim down sights thing, which is a little bit more of a modern first-person shooter type of aesthetic. I don't care what game I play, like if it's Apex or any other type of first-person shooter game, for me, aim down sights will always be L3 or R3, whichever one. I think it's L3. I just can't pull the trigger and aim down sights in a Halo game. It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, that whole Smart Link system was the armor Spartan abilities that Halo 5 added. And then they also added a new game type called Breakout, which is something that I would love to hear your guys' opinions on, because it was marketed as highly competitive, very, one life sort of thing, round base. And I don't really think it went anywhere, but we'll get to that in a minute. They introduced the new game mode called Warzone, which is their 12v12 mode, kind of is a flavor of PvP versus PvE. They also had Warzone Assault, which made it a little bit more on the PvP side, and then Warzone Firefight, which is more on the PvE side. So it's kind of interesting to have the balance, and then one mode that focuses on each of those play styles within the Warzone system. But what's interesting about Warzone is that they had the whole rec system where you can spend these cards and these points to get high-powered variants of other guns, and they literally like tripled the sandbox of all these weapons, because now every weapon has 2 or 3 variants, and every vehicle has 5 or 6 variants and different reskins, and this one shoots heavier bullets against shields, whereas this one has bigger AoE, and this one has higher armor. So Warzone was quite literally a sandbox, to where 343 just kept kind of designing and putting more things into it just to see what would work. They even added, for the Warzone bosses and stuff, they added the Grunt Goblin, which is something that they just kind of wrote out of, from their back pocket and implemented in the Halo Wars 2 game as well. And so it's interesting to kind of see from a multiplayer standpoint them just adding things as on like a live base. Like, it's not like a live service that we know like some of those games, but when Halo 5 came out, like the first year and a half, every month or two, they would have this new content drop of multiplayer content, which, on the upside, it's great because we get to have new content, but on the downside, it's like, well, why wasn't some of this stuff in the game from the beginning? Oddball, for instance. Like, why, guys? And then they also had something called Custom Games Browser, where it was their kind of answer to join custom games on the fly, so you can kind of search for different games. I didn't really dabble too much into it. I know they're trying to implement it into MCC right now with kind of mixed success, but something that I'm glad that was added in the script after the fact, that was added for the competitive side, is Observer Mode, which I think, from my point of view, I think is pretty huge, and I'd love to hear your guys' take on it as well, on how this detail was added into competitive matches. So then you have an observer that can be the stream host that can then bounce from different points of view from either team. You can toggle on the outlines of the enemy team so you can see them, and kind of it created so much more capabilities to host and watch and observe competitive games. We'll go to you, but before we talk about observer mode, because I want to end on a high note, I want to talk about Breakout. So touch on Breakout, as well as just Halo 5 multiplayer in general.
Sure. So we'll start with Breakout. It was designed to be that high competitive mode, and I think the pros got their hands on it and they're like, yeah, this isn't it. I like the idea of a one life mode like that, the high intensity, but it just, I don't know. It wasn't implemented properly, maybe.
No.
Because I think Halo could benefit from having a competitive Halo could benefit from having a mode like that in a long series where it is respawn. Everything's respawn, right? Having something that has that higher intense on that one life, playing your one life to the fullest, could have impact. And I wish they would have just designed it a little bit better. I enjoy playing Breakout. I guess here and there, I can't sit in it all day. There's also the fact.
Where do you think the fault lies? Is it that it's round based with one life, or is it just like the level design and the engagement style, or is it kind of just the whole thing just wasn't put together?
I could agree with the level design isn't great. Not for me. The flag in the middle too, having to bring that like back to your own base. If you get a pick, sometimes you can just set up to get that flag and run it all the way back without any contestant. So having like something where you have to bring the flag forward to the enemy side to score would have been, I think, better in my opinion. I don't know. Something just doesn't click with it. I guess I came with my finger on the exact point. What about, do you have any ideas, Josh?
I have a controversial point I'd like to make. There was a lot of talks within the competitive community around Halo 5's multiplayer in general, and an individual that worked for 343 who, as we've learned now, still does. Obviously not going to name names. The people, they're going to make the game that they want to make. I think that the disconnect was that the pro team didn't have a lot of say into things that were happening. And it seems like, again, this is just an assumption, it seems like 343 took it upon themselves to market this game mode as that this is what it's going to be, take it or leave it. And the competitive community were like, all right, fuck it, we're leaving it.
Yeah.
And the second iteration of Breakpoint's worse. With the shotguns?
Oh yeah.
That shit's way worse.
What'd they do that? I don't even think I've played it since.
Oh, they introduced different maps, and they made it so like they gave you different starting weapons, and one of them's a fucking shotgun. It's like, and considering you have less health than in a traditional multiplayer match, just think about that. And how overpowered the shotgun is in Halo 5 on small close quarters maps. Thing's a fucking nightmare. That was the worst implementation that they've done, was Breakout 2.0.
Now that we had that out of the way, Will, from a multiplayer standpoint, Halo 5 critically, like in pretty much mainstream media and mainstream like gaming news organizations have praised the multiplayer fairly consistently, with the campaign being not quite as much as so. So since you entered the Halo franchise from Halo 5, what are your opinions on it, and how does it compare to other first-person shooters, and what makes Halo 5's multiplayer click for you that kind of brought you into this franchise?
So what makes the multiplayer click? I like I want to say mobility, but that kind of ties in those Spartan abilities, right? I'm actually not a fan of ground pound and Spartan charge. It's too almost gimmicky for me in the multiplayer sense, since I like the competitive side of it. But I like the being able to the thrust slide and jump up and hit shots as you're flying across the map. It makes it fun. The hit registry, when it's working well in Halo 5, a crispy 5-shot feels great with a pistol. The multiplayer really grasped me. It was the first like full arena shooter that I had really dove into, other than Call of Duty, which I was never really good at. I was a run and gun type of person on that, where I would just be the first person in the door and probably the first person to die. So Halo gave me a better understanding of how to set up teamwork, things like that. So Halo 5's multiplayer, I enjoy it a lot. I feel like when I go back and play Halo 3 or the older Halos, I feel like it's so much slower. It is more methodical, and you can say that takes more strategy and more kind of patience on the player, but I kind of like the high action that Halo 5 brings in. Clamber is great when it works. It leaves you in if you're mid clamber and someone catches you, it's kind of a disadvantage. You have to then reset, get your gun back out. And I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think the issue with Halo 5 is that the maps were designed for clamber, other than just I can jump here and only clamber if I absolutely need to. So some of the abilities, while I do like them, I just wish they were implemented or designed around better, if that makes sense.
Now, do you think the way sprint was handled in Halo 5 was better or worse compared to Halo 4? Because in Halo 4, it was limited, but you could, or it was, I guess, a timed sprint, so you can only sprint for a certain duration. In Halo 5, you don't have a time delay or anything like that. You can sprint for as long as you want, but your shields wouldn't be able to regen unless you stop sprinting for about 2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah, I think the no shield regen was a good balance for it. And I like the later iteration of radar with sprinting for multiplayer too. I'm fine with being able to sprint because your gun's down. You can't shoot when you're sprinting, so you're at that disadvantage if you want to move faster. But when competitive first came out, you were on the radar if you were sprinting or not, right? they later changed it to where if you're only using an ability, so sprint, thrust, clamber, that you would show up on the radar. So another reason to kind of counter sprint is you're going to show up if you walk it out, if you move more methodically, you might not show up on radar and be at that disadvantage of an enemy player knowing where you're at. So I think they did a lot better with sprint in Halo 5 than any previous title.
Very good. Josh, what are your thoughts on Halo 5 and how, given all that we've talked through, the 20 years of Halo we've gone through, how does Halo 5 sit among the implementations of other Halo games? And do you just, your own personal opinions after that?
If I'm going to put a blanket statement on it, I'll say this. I think Halo 5 is the best competitive Halo multiplayer, period. I think the skill ceiling is so high that it still has not been reached to this day. There are still jumps, there are still clamber mechanics, there's still thrust mechanics, slide mechanics that have still yet to be done, especially in a competitive environment. And it's a shame because this is another instance, and I talked about it kind of briefly during the Halo Reach portion, where there was that big disconnect that happened between the competitive community and the developer. And Halo 5 felt like that divide was even further. We're talking about a Halo game. Now, this isn't even competitive. We're talking about a Halo game that didn't launch with Big Team Battle. Halo 5 did not launch with Big Team Battle. Oren, you mentioned it before. Halo 5 did not launch with Oddball. Oddball's first implementation was terrible, to the point where they removed it, fixed it, and put it back in the competitive rotation. And even now, it's still not amazing. Halo 5, I think, like we mentioned earlier on in the show, right? Adapt or die in terms of sprint. Now, the other mobility options, I think they were trying to separate themselves from the rest. Clamber, like Will mentioned, is cool when it works. But that's the problem, right? It doesn't work 100% of the time. But when it does, it's a magical moment that's like, I didn't know I could get up there. Or that's really cool. This puts me in an advantageous position against an enemy. Or just navigating around a campaign map and finding cool places to go that you just haven't seen before. There's stuff like that that's really cool with Clamber. Thrust, again, a really cool addition. It adds an added layer of mobility that hadn't been present before. Sprint, Will, you hit the nail on the head. In its team arena settings implementation, where it is right now, where it only activates if you sprint, use an ability, or you shoot. That's fine. There was an advocation when the game released that competitive cannot have radar, but it did. Halo 5's competitive, when it started, had autos, as in like the assault rifle, which, no. In a competitive aspect, no. It doesn't work. But it launched with that. That's what pro players had to deal with. Ground Pound was in competitive. No. Ground Pound did not belong. They removed it, but it took a long time to do so. I keep talking about this divide that's happened, and they have a new pro team in place with Infinite. I'm hoping that they are listened to more thoroughly. Wes Clutch is the team lead, I believe, of the pro team over there. They have a great, I'm not trying to shit on anybody. They have a great group of people over there. They obviously love Halo and they want to make the best game that they can. And that's why I said earlier, we want them to make the game that they want to make. Just allow us the opportunity to tweak things the way we see fit and have that be the competitive settings. It's whether or not they allow that dynamic to happen that can cause a further or a less divide within the communities. Breakout, like I said, I felt like it's because of what 343 wanted to do that maybe they didn't take a lot of feedback from the professional or their pro team internally, and we got Breakout in its first iteration. Breakout 2.0, I think, was them trying to save a dying horse that was dead already. They're trying to resuscitate something that was already dead, but okay, go ahead. I really, really wanted to like Warzone. I really did. And this isn't against the rec system. I think the rec system is fine for what it is. My problem, and I talk about this all the time, is that it all came down when that boss showed up, who got the last shot. It didn't matter what team put the most amount of damage into it. all that mattered is who was at that right place and put that last shot. Didn't matter if it was a pistol, a light rifle, a souped up gun, didn't matter. Whoever got that last shot, that team got the points. And that is what killed that mode for me. And then the rec system. Microtransactions, ladies and gentlemen. We had them in Halo 5. You know what's funny? They still exist. You can still go into Halo 5 right now in the game and you can buy with real money rec packs. Frankly, I don't know why, but it is what it is. What they did introduce, though, which was really cool from a competitive standpoint, they introduced for the first time team packs. So you were able to buy a rec pack that contained weapon skins. Oh, we didn't even talk about weapon skins in Halo 4. But you could buy a team pack that had weapon skins for your BR and your pistol for a lot of the major pro teams that were in the scene at the time. Now, times have changed and a lot of those organizations are no longer within competitive Halo. So if you have those skins, it's kind of a cool thing to be like, I got in when the getting was good, because you're not simply able to get them anymore. But no, campaign aside, because I think the campaign has grown on me over time. Also, going back to Halo 4 just for a split second, I know we're talking about multiplayer, but I have to say, I think Halo 4's campaign got too much shit, because I genuinely think it's better than what people give it. But at the same time, it gives me those vibes of having to insert Cortana into everything, like you have to insert your Ghost into everything in Destiny, which is fucking stupid, but that's besides the point. No, Halo 5, I think, was a great evolution of what Halo 4 was doing, but while bringing things back and grounding them into what Halo is. And again, I say that statement as Sprint has been in Halo for a long time now. Those who were still stuck in their ways of Halo 1, 2, and 3, where Sprint was never even a consideration, need to move on. Sprint is in Halo. It's here to stay. We already know it's in Infinite. Halo 5 was a true evolution of what Halo 4 did, while stripping back the unnecessary things that didn't make Halo what it was. We got rid of the loadouts. Good. We got rid of the major Spartan abilities, and now you just have your core things that every single person has, so it's an even playing field, and it's just how good you use them, which separates your skill from somebody else on the battlefield. And again, talked about this with Halo 1. From a multiplayer standpoint, I'm not a big fan of a pistol being the primary weapon, but hey, it is what it is. Adapt or die. I'm happy that hopefully we're going to get the battle rifle back as the primary. Hopefully. We'll see. We have no idea. This is all speculation. Yeah. But yeah, and then you touched on at the end, Oren, observer mode, right? You wanted to end on a high note here. This is the big thing that separates Halo 5, and this is something that us from the competitive community have desperately wanted in MCC, especially with the resurgence of not just official, but like community-run MCC events, where there's no observer mode in MCC. And observer mode is crucial to an esport nowadays. You're able to see player outlines. You're able to see player pictures, right? You're able to see their health, what weapons they have, the time remaining on the map. And I know that's typical, but like the score, that everything, you're able to see everything from an observer's point of view. And the fact that Halo 5 was the introduction of that in Halo, and it really set the bar for what it can be and what it should be in the future. So it's not an MCC right now. Hopefully, maybe some blue moon away, we get it in MCC, which would be amazing. I'm not holding my breath for it, but no, I think Halo 5 is the best competitive multiplayer that Halo's ever had, just because the skill ceiling has still not been reached yet. And it's a damn shame, because I truly feel, and again, I'm really trying not to shit on anybody, it's just without 343's support, I felt like that's a reason why we're in the state that we're currently in. I didn't mention it, and I said I was going to. Halo 4 was not a competitive game. We know that. And I mentioned that there was a downfall of Halo esports for a time. There were dark days. That's what happened. Towards the tail end of Reach, when Halo 4 was coming, oh man, we all thought, it's done. We're done. We had a good run, guys, but we're done. But then the silver lining came, right? Halo 4. And there was a lot of complaints about this too, from a normal multiplayer standpoint, that it seemed like 343 were focusing a lot of their efforts on making a competitive game. And I hear that, and I understand that, and I respect that opinion. But Halo 5 had the introduction of the Halo World Championship for the first time ever. with $1 million prize pool in Halo Esports for its first big event. And we never seen something like that in Halo competitive. We just never seen something like that. So we thought that, oh my God, we're back. This is it. But then the second World Championship happened. Changes were coming slowly, very slowly. Organizations started leaving. Controversy started happening within organizations within the scene. Things started piling up and piling up. Less frequent updates came. And we're in this situation right now. Not great, not terrible. We're not in Halo 4 days right now, ladies and gentlemen, so please don't think we're there, because we're not. It's just, like I mentioned before, you guys, the community, is what's keeping this scene afloat. Not just competitive, but multiplayer in general. Fuck it. If you guys aren't playing, what are they going to do? If you guys aren't playing MCC, they're not going to introduce custom game browser because nobody's playing the game. It's because the community is still playing these games, still creating tournaments on the esports side of things, that are keeping things afloat. That's why we keep remaining hopeful for Infinite, because we know, and I hate to say it because I don't want this to happen, but in the event the core competitive dies in Infinite, at least we know that the community is going to be there to pick it up. Halo 5 is a good game. Sprint belongs in Halo. Shut the fuck up.
Well, let's now move on to Halo Infinite. So we just spent the better part of an hour or so talking about all the other games. Here's everything that we know as of now. We're at the end of April. We don't know a whole lot, and feel free to chime in here if I miss anything, but essentially we know that Halo Infinite will have slightly different weapon tunings between the campaign and the multiplayer. We know from the audio team that there's, in both campaign and in multiplayer, there's a different like threat level system, to where if there is a threat that is more directed at you, you will hear that audio more than other threats in the area and more than your allied forces, whether it's your other teammates or NPCs in the campaign. We know that Mr. Jeff Stizer will be returning to announce the multiplayer modes and the medals that we earn. We know that Halo Infinite is free to play. We know that there's going to be equipment that we can pick up on the map that we could start with in custom games, but I think what's his name? Del Hoyo? What's his?
Quinn Del Hoyo.
Quinn, that's it. Quinn Del Hoyo. He said that on the competitive side of it, everyone's going to start with the same weapons and everything, but things like the grapple shot or the drop wall or any other equipment will be map pickups, just like other power weapons and things like that. And so we're getting painted a picture, in my eyes, fairly similarly to a Halo 3 multiplayer, namely because of the equipment, but also 343 continues to talk about how Infinite is very much a spiritual reboot, so where they want to capture the essence of the original trilogy and also give in the flavor from the more recent Halo games. And Halo 2 and Halo 3 have been very present in the art design that we've seen so far. Josh, and even I think Will, even you did it as well, mentioned that the BR is being modeled after the Halo 2 BR. And we even got an audio clip of it, which sounds so freaking good. Like I personally cannot stand the Halo 4 BR sounds. Like, I don't know what your guys' thing on it, but it just sounds so annoying. Halo 5 is okay, but to listen to what they had, it honestly brought a smile to my face. And even listening to the other audio bits, I was driving to work listening to it, and it was I am so excited for this game. But in any event, that's some of the things that we know about Halo Infinite. What I want to present to you guys, since we just had this long conversation about the legacy and the franchise of Halo's multiplayer, what are some things from past games that you feel, not necessarily need to be in Infinite, but in order for Infinite to have a successful multiplayer from the hardcore fans and anyone who's coming into the Halo space, what do you feel like needs to be present there that we can then take with to have the longevity that this multiplayer can have, and that the Halo franchise frankly deserves to have, the legs to kind of keep this going with the competitive? And this could just be the competitive support. It could be a specific type of gameplay feature. what are your kind of thoughts and hopes for Halo Infinite and its competitive multiplayer, not just its general multiplayer, but specifically competitive?
Well, Oren, I'm glad you asked that question because the answer is a battle royale mode.
No.
I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding, by the way. That's like the biggest fucking debate right now. No, in all seriousness, so Tashi, one of the HCS members of 343, has stated that their big plan, and they've already announced a partnership with Esports Engine, which is composed of ex-MLG guys who wanted to create their own thing again and kind of start fresh, which is fantastic. So you know the pedigree is there, right? It's whether or not all the dominoes fall in line. So Tashi has come out and said that his plan, as we know, is to release a 12-month roadmap for the HCS, the competitive portion of Halo Infinite, closer to the game's release. Give people a heads up of what to expect for events, who's going to be the partners behind them, everything involved with that. So we're still waiting on that front. And as you're well aware, Oren, last Thursday of every month they do an Inside Infinite blog post, right? And then around
there's that, but there's all Tashi specifically has a inside. It's not Inside NC. It's designing the esports ecosystem, I think, is what their thing, and that's like every Tuesday, last Tuesday of every month.
Correct. So as you just said, I was about to say, towards the same time, Tashi does the same thing towards the HCS. So we're waiting for this month's, obviously. Excited to see what that's going to be all about. But we know that there are plans in place, there are gears turning, and we also know that there's some major organizations that are either coming back or just joining the fold to start things off. For reference here, Elamite, who is a caster for Halo, does streaming as well. I believe he's a grassroots partner now, if I'm not mistaken. He is part of Space Station Gaming, and they have put out a couple teases that they are going to be joining Halo for the first time. We know that Team Envious is back, and they've already signed a team. We know that Sentinels is in Halo, and they've been in Halo since 5, but we know that they're really going to hit things home in Infinite. We have these gears, like I said, that are turning. Things are moving forward. Very excited for what we're eventually going to hear within the space. As for what I want out of other Halo titles, I like how it appears that things are going back to more of a hybrid model, like you mentioned with Halo 3's equipment, and like we see with Halo 5's movement. To me, it feels as though this is going to be more of a hybrid between Halo 3 and Halo 5, probably more along the line of Halo 5's abilities and shooting mechanics, and then Halo 3's equipment and overall groundedness within the series, I guess you could say. Like I like Halo 5's abilities, but I think maybe there's too many. In the gameplay reveal that we got for the campaign, we did not see a ground pound. So it makes me believe, and this is what I said this during our reveal event, like when we did a watch along for it. One of the things I said was, if we don't see it here, it's more than likely not in the game. So we didn't see ground pound, which makes me believe that it's not going to be in the game. We didn't see a thrust, which makes me believe it's not going to be in the game. We also did not see ADS, which makes me believe it's not going to be in the game. We saw sprint and clamber. And then we also saw, well, they call it mantle now, but same difference. And then we also saw the grapple shot for the first time. Obviously, it was one of the big things they revealed. So let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that Infinite's multiplayer is that we took the equipment style of pickups on the map from Halo 3, and we take parts of Halo 5's movement mechanics and abilities, and we put it into a game. I am all for that. Because while I am not great at Halo 5 by any stretch of the imagination, sometimes I feel like there's too much going on. And again, this gets back to that skill ceiling, saying that it's so high, that it's still, the potential has still not been met because there's so many things that can be worked with one another, right? But I feel if you strip a couple of those back and make it the best amalgamation of both of those types of games in one, then I'm going to be happy no matter what. But that's what I'm personally looking for.
What about you, Will?
Well, they have mentioned that they want Infinite to be another long-term plan for a Halo game.
10 years.
They have said with the new Slipspace engine that it does allow them to tune, create, and do things at a lot faster pace. Now, I don't know about you, but we've had pretty much the same multiplayer maps over the last 5 years that haven't really changed much. So for me, what I really want to see is consistent content updates. At least from a competitive sense, get some sort of map rotation where we're not playing the same 3 maps over and over again for 10 years, because that's gonna, it's gonna get stale. It would. So I hope that we have that consistent content update where there's fresh maps coming in for multiplayer. They're bringing in new content to keep everyone excited and engaged in the game. Josh, I think you're right with the too much abilities in Halo 5. I think they have refined it down. We did see Mantle and Sprint. I am worried about equipment, though, from a competitive standpoint. Just the fact that the drop wall, you can shoot through your side and the enemy can't shoot back. From a competitive sense, that doesn't seem to make sense being in the game, because while you trap someone, you drop the wall down, you 2-man, 3-man push it, and you're safe from getting any sort of damage. But I believe they might take some of that equipment out in competitive. From a casual point, it could be really fun. It could create some interesting gameplay moments. I'm excited to see what we get, because it does seem like they are building that hybrid, that refined Halo, and hopefully Infinite is the spark point that brings Halo back.
I pretty much agree with what you guys are saying. I like, Will, your note about fresh content, because it's something that I didn't really give any thought, but you're 100% right. If this is the next 10 years of Halo, then we're gonna need more maps and more things to keep it fresh, new, and exciting. Because we're still playing Truth and Regret and Plaza, the Rig and the Coliseum. Like those all maps launched with Halo 5. And even though 343 has released new maps since then, it seems that their core competitive maps they haven't created new maps in that caliber. It's been different flavors and maps that are just not on that level, and they need to. That's a very important aspect that they need to touch on, to have those scale of fun and competitive maps included in the later release pipeline.
Oren, you mind if I make a point real quick?
Yeah, what's up?
Based off that, the additional content, I need to shit on Halo 5 again. So, we did talk about how Halo 5 had free content updates. They didn't last forever, but they came. If I swear to God, if I see another Midship remake, I'm going to fucking pull my hair out. And can we talk about Halo 5's content updates were free? That's fantastic. They got away from the paid map pack model. Instead of segregating players, they allowed everybody to play together. That's great. That is absolutely great. But when your free content is literal rehashes of the same maps at launch, that's not good content. They released Torque, and then they released Stasis, which is a frozen version of Torque. And then they released Overgrowth, which is an overgrown version of, was it Fathom?
No, Truth.
Truth? Was it Truth?
Wait, no. Which one is? What are you saying? Overgrowth?
Oh no, Overgrowth was a Plaza. That's what it was.
Overgrowth
it was an overgrown
Plaza,
version of Plaza. And then they released one that was...
They released Riptide, which was...
basically Fathom.
Basically Fathom.
That's what irritates me, is that you're going to advertise that you're coming out with free content updates, brand new maps, Rex, the whole shebang, for a certain amount of time, but that stuff that we get is just rehashes of the same content we've already had. So jumping off Will's point, I want new content, new maps. And then, like you said, Will, having a rotational set like we see in the Call of Duty League. Like being able to have something you can swap in and out. I'm not saying we need a vote ban system or anything like that, but just add more variety to something here. It's just
you could have a 2022 season, and it could have the 5 to 7 maps that you have, and then the 2023 or 2024 season can be a different lineup, and it could be now not only are those new maps, but we have a little bit of new and old. So then now me as a pro player has to do my homework on these maps as well, and it gives me more things to do instead of continuing to just look at the plazas and the truths and the regrets and the coliseums.
Absolutely.
One thing we haven't touched on is Infinite's multiplayer is free to play.
It is.
And I saw that in the show notes here. So I'm sure we will be getting content updates, and I do expect microtransactions to be back with this. 343 needs a way to monetize a free multiplayer, and I think that's going to be it. Now, how they do that, I don't know. Are we going to get weapon skins? We've saw
Armor coatings.
already.
Yeah, armor coatings.
Are we getting vehicle skins? We saw that come into MCC.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to know more about that and what they have planned. I guess I'm just excited that the fact that it is free to play, I feel will bring in more people than would have originally bought a $60 to $70 AAA game, right?
I just hope this is not another experience like I mentioned before where they took the dive to do free content updates, but they went about it the wrong way. I really hope this is not the same thing. I don't think it's going to be, but I just hope it's not the same thing where they're doing the right thing on making multiplayer free to play to bring in more people that didn't already have access to it. And I hope they don't botch that, because it just feels like, I'm not saying that Halo's dead. I'll never say that, because realistically it's not. Halo's not dead. It just feels like we could be in a much, much better place. And everybody wants Infinite to be that. And they have a huge, huge mountain on their shoulders that they have to overcome here, because there's so much pressure being put on them to create something that's gonna sell series consoles, that is gonna put Halo back on the map in some way, shape, or form, and is gonna make Microsoft a lot of money. That's the whole point.
Okay, so I'm going to close out my thoughts on Infinite here. There's a saying I read, and I've kind of been applying it to this game because I want to enjoy it, and it's Halo, and I'm going to be playing it no matter what. But the saying is, happiness equals life without expectations. So when I apply that to Halo, I kind of don't want to expect anything from this game. I want to go into it with that mindset that it's Halo, it's going to be what it's going to be, and I'm going to play it no matter what. If I don't like certain things, then I don't like it, but maybe that's just me. Yes, we can talk about all these things that it needs, but in my mind, it's going to be what it's going to be, and all we can do at this point is kind of wait. They have a pro team in place. The team is in development. Hopefully, they're close to done. I would hope that they're there, right?
It's just polishing at this point. The game's coming out eventually.
They have it. I'm sure they will announce when the game has gone gold.
Yeah.
But I imagine that would happen sometime this summer, or at least I hope it would. So then that way they have a couple months for bug fixing and quality of life.
We didn't talk about flighting and how, it started with MCC. For those who don't know what flighting is, they take a portion, like a subset of the game, typically multiplayer, at least now in MCC especially, and they provide it to a group of individuals, regardless of how big or how small that group is, to basically play test it, provide feedback, submit bugs, and the team looks it over, fixes the things that they can leading up to the release of the game, or the patch, or whatever it is. In Infinite, it has been said that they are going to reintroduce flights again, and all the speculation has been towards this summer, like after the June event, obviously, for an announcement of some kind for flights to kick up, because otherwise, what time do you have?
Yeah, because after MCC launched, I think Bonnie said that every Halo game from here on out will have some form of beta. And I think after the success of the flighting program with MCC, 343 is looking to do the same type of implementation for Infinite. And yeah, if it's not, Halo Infinite's beta was like a whole year, almost a whole year before the game came out. So it seems to be the best time to launch it would be the summer, kind of leading up to all that. So, but Will, I think you kind of said it best. To not have very high expectations, or in your case, not to have hardly any, because it is going to be what it is going to be. And yeah, it gets me excited thinking about the hybrid between Halo 3 and Halo 5, because Halo 3, to me, is a very close game, and played a lot of that, so I can only hope for that. But I do agree that there is this looming presence that if it doesn't hit it out of the park, or it doesn't have to be a grand slam, but there needs to be some type of home run, to keep the baseball references going, to get Halo in a space I'm very hopeful and confident that we can, or that they can achieve that. And yeah, we're just excited to see what this multiplayer reveal will be seemingly over the summer. So any final thoughts from you guys before we wrap up this monster of an episode?
I'm good.
I'll just say, Oren, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us on. Yeah, I don't have much else to say. I had my hot takes in this episode, so everybody can judge me based off that. But no, the fact of the matter is, and we've said it before, we all love this franchise. We all want to see it succeed. And we're all excited for what Infinite is going to be. And we just can't fucking wait to get our hands on it. Like, that's...
Yeah.
It'll be 6 years. It'll be 6 years since Halo 5's release. So, been a long time coming. Can't wait to play the game. Can't wait to talk to you guys more about it. Again, thank you for having us on.
It was my pleasure having the two of you guys on. It, like we said at the top of the show, we have our partnership content that we're creating for each other's shows, and I'm really excited for the plans that we have for the rest of the year. And as we take this partnership and more things get announced for Infinite, I'm confident that we'll have more source material and ideas to kind of strengthen that, and kind of as you say on every one of your shows, bridging that gap. So thank you guys for joining me. This has been the road to Infinite. I usually say what the next episode is, but I'm hesitant to say what I have scheduled because I don't know if I really want to talk about it, so I don't want to say anything. I want to see if I can think of something else that might be better suited for this series before we get to our big episode at the end, which will be kind of a general timeline from Halo 5 into Halo Reaches or Halo Infinite's release. So you have that to look forward to in the next couple months. This has been, Podcast Evolved. And before we go, the two of you want to plug your guys' show. If you're listening to this from our show, guys, please listen to their show. It's my frame of reference for all the names and people that they shout out is a little beyond me, but I learned something new, and you guys are a good hoot to listen to. So I definitely encourage our listeners to check out your show if they want more to learn about the competitive scene, because like we just spent the last 2 hours talking about, it's huge, and it's the community that's driving it. So where can they find you guys?
All right, so first off, fuck you, Will, because you put me on the spot with this shit. So Will does this in the show every week, but now he's telling me to do it. So you can find us on your favorite podcast services. Check us out on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, among others.
Pocket Cast.
Yeah! Yes, baby, Pocket Cast. You can find us on Discord. I mean, you don't see the show notes in this show, but our link is in our show notes. So you can find us on Discord. You can find us at our Xbox Club. Just search for HCS Pro Talk, or don't, because that shit's dead. We have a Spartan company. Yeah. That shit's also dead. You can find us on the favorite social media platforms, including Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. We have our own esportspedia page that's not currently updated. We have our own website, hcsprotalk.com, which also has a link to our merch. You can check that out. And then, Oren, you're going to talk about this anyway, but fuck it, I don't care. We have a Halo Podcast Evolved partnership, so make sure to check out HaloPodcast.com, your home for Halo. They have Podcast Evolved Mission Debrief Book Club Builds with Blocks and Halo Headlines, which Oren almost forgot to plug at the beginning of the show.
No, I did forget, and then you reminded me. One thing I do want you to say on my show, can you plug a certain website that gives you all of the HCS and other competitive news? Do you know which one I'm talking about without me saying it?
Oh, you can check out noobcombo.com for all your Halo esports needs. Also, I want to do, also with no merch, but I'm going to do a, for those who listen to our show, you'll get that reference at the very end there. But I also want to say that something I want to work on with Will is creating a quote-unquote HCS primer series, because there isn't a lot of that information out there of like how to get into it, the settings, the teams that are involved, so on and so forth, because we don't have anything in an official capacity right now. But that is something that I want to work on, especially for Infinite. So try to provide more context as to what it is we talk about and allow newcomers to come in and fully understand what's going on.
No, that's awesome. I think that's a brilliant idea.
Thank you.
So, well, all right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This episode ran much longer than we usually do, but it was jam-packed with some good times and some good Halo multiplayer goodness. Once again, want to shout out to our patrons for supporting us. You guys, like I say, every episode, keep the lights on, allow us to do things like these partnerships and our other interviews and original albums and art pieces and stuff like that. And if you want to learn more about being a patron, go to patreon.com/halopodcastevolved.com. And finally, if you want to leave us a voicemail, you can give us a call at 205-EVOLVED or 205-386-5833 if you want to share any thoughts that you had on this episode or anything else Halo related. And yeah, I've been your host, Oren, and until next time, evolved!
Evolved!
Evolve!